All right, Matt. So for the next show, do you want to? I was thinking maybe we could like do some sort of Twitter, Facebook advertising. Maybe
Oh,
shoot like a little.
hold on. I'm getting some breaking news.
Mhm.
It seems Nomadland is won Best Picture at the Academy Awards.
That's not breaking news. I mean, we just covered that on Picture This just a few days ago.
Oh, I'm now getting word that we are in the midst of a global pandemic, something called coronavirus disease 2019.
Yeah, that's old news. Are you okay? Who's talking to you? Why do you have an earpiece?
I'm now getting word that the only reason Dylan cut his hair is because he was intimidated by Matt's luxurious locks.
That is not true. All right, and if anyone, it was Crosby.
Well, I'm now getting word that Dylan is a bastard who doesn't realize that Matt has feelings.
What is going on?
Ladies and gentlemen, don't be alarmed. I have just gotten word that there has been a frame wreck.
I guess cut to credit then.
What a story, Mark.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Framewreck. That was a great cold open, as always, Matt. This is my co-host, Matt Chapmond. I'm going to turn the floor over to Matt for a few words.
Okay, so it's going to get a little heavy for a second, but don't worry, we'll get right back into the awesome hijinks. But today, and that is today, the day of recording, not the day that you're watching this, it is the 2-year anniversary of the day of my mother, Cindy's passing. She passed away 2 years ago. And I just kind of wanted to do a quick tribute to her. The whole reason that I am into film in the first place is because of my mother. She used to go rent movies every Friday night and bring home a pizza and some movies, and we would watch them. And that was every Friday night. She'd take us to the video store and she'd let us pick out our own movie. I rented Terminator 2 about 1,000 times. We probably should have just bought it, but and the reason that I developed a taste in film in general, which, I'm known here for loving bad movies, but I'm actually known in most circles for loving good movies. The reason I developed that taste is because of my mother, and I have her to thank for everything that has to do with movies with me. However, she is also responsible for my love of bad movies. One day, I don't remember if it was the Blair Witch Project or The Sixth Sense. It was around 99 or early 2000. She went to the video store and they were out of whichever one of those she wanted. And she said, "Is there anything else, kind of like that we can watch?" And the very well-meaning but uninformed video store clerk took her to this movie called The House That Screamed that had just come out. And there's a movie from like 1969 called The House of Scream. That's not this movie. This movie is from like the year 2000, 99, 2000. And it is the first time I ever watched a movie where I laughed the entire time, but for reasons that were not intentional for that movie. And what's great is that like she had watched it first and she recognized how much garbage it was and told me, "You have to watch this movie. It is so bad. It was made for," I remember specifically, she said it was made for about 75 cents.
Wow.
And I did, and it was awesome. And then I showed about 3 other friends at different times this movie before we had to take it back in that 5-day window. It was amazing. So I have her to thank for all of this. And right now I just wanted to pay tribute to that because it is the anniversary of her death, but also I just want to thank her for giving me this love of film and of bad movies.
Yeah, it's a beautiful tribute, Matt, and my condolences to you. And thank you for being here. Thank you for being a great part of this channel and of this this whole building of a network. It's all about the network, and it's not just the people who are on the screen who are hosting these shows. It's the people off screen who also inspire us and got us
Right.
into the love of movies and all that too. So my condolences to you. And now, speaking of bad movies, we are talking about another very big staple in bad movies, and that is Birdemic Shock and Terror. Matt, I'm sure you have a bunch to say about the history of Birdemic and all about Birdemic, and I can't wait to get into it. Any opening comments about Birdemic?
Well, it's one of the worst movies ever made. Now, I actually want to ask you, because you famously now couldn't get through it the first time, and now that you have revisited it, where do you stand on Birdemic?
Well, you have to judge it as a movie first, and then as a bad movie second. And as a
Right.
movie, it's dog shit. It's terrible.
Oh, it's bad.
It is bad. And I think the reason I didn't understand or didn't make it through the first time is because the whole time I was, everyone hyped up the bird stuff, and the bird stuff doesn't come till at least halfway in, at least
Right.
not the big bird stuff. There's one bird on the beach that comes about 40 minutes in, but you really don't get a lot of birds till halfway through. So I guess like the whole time I was like, oh really? And then when the birds finally came, I was like, I turned it off, and that is just me being, I guess snobby and being like, this is garbage, turn off. And I knew it was garbage going in, but it was. I watched, I had a retrospective last year of the movies of 2010. I kind of went on my Letterboxd. I didn't have this channel yet, but on my Letterboxd, I went through every movie of 2010 that was notable, good and bad. I watched Last Airbender and Birdemic in like a double feature. So it was just a pile of bad movies, and I had to stop it. And I remember my Letterboxd review, I said, it makes Tommy Wiseau look like Steven Spielberg. Like it was rough. So
It's not far off, actually.
no. And rewatching it, I did make it all the way through. Taking notes, so I didn't have to stare at it the whole time. I could look down at my notes, but I did hear it the whole time, and trust me, the sound is a big part. But yeah, it was more enjoyable because I could finally get past the idea that the birds don't come until halfway through, and I just had to accept that. And then I could like find the little nuances, and when you really look for the details, that's really where the beauty is, because it's not as like. It is as obviously bad, but it's not as obviously, and compared to the second half, it's not as obvious how bad it is. So yeah, really, really bad, but really enjoyable this time. I did find myself enjoying it a lot.
Nice, good. Well, my history with this is actually very similar to what you heard last month with The Room, which is that I worked at the video store when this came out. And someone rented it, brought it back, and said, "This is terrible." And they were like, "The CGI birds are awful. The story is bad," and they went through a bunch of things I'm sure we're going to touch on here. But they were like, "This is just a bad movie." And just like with The Room, I didn't clock that this might be a good bad movie.
Right.
I just had heard this is a bad movie, and that's as far as it went with me. So then years later, someone was like, "Oh no, you have to watch this." And I watched it, and it was awesome. And I've watched it several times since then.
Yeah.
So that's my history with it. It's just the same thing where someone tells me it's bad and I write it off, and I don't give it the time. I should give I should have learned from The Room. Actually, I guess I hadn't learned that lesson yet. So
I think it's also important with intention. We always talk about on the show, it's always about movies that are intended to be good that aren't. So movies that like are going for the bad thing, like there are movies that do that like go to make a bad movie, and sometimes they're actually good. But this is a movie that I thought was, they definitely had to do this for jokes. They definitely thought they were making a bad movie, but they weren't. And we'll get into that. But it was really shocking when I read all the stuff about how it was a passion project. It was like a labor of love. And if you watch it, it's not clear. Even The Room, there's an element of, he's starring in it and he's really good, giving his all. So you like get that sense of passion, where this one, it's just like, there's no way they thought this was good, but they did. It looks like something you could have put together on iMovie in 2 hours, and not even edited, and that's the thing. It doesn't feel like it's edited. It just feels like, all right, adding this here, it's good. Check, next, export, like it really is crazy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Dylan, can you give us a brief synopsis of Birdemic?
Yeah, I mean, again, the first half is just people talking and driving cars, and you've got a guy who I guess used to be, what was his previous job, and what is his new job? He is a salesman now, and he was an engineer earlier.
Yes, I believe that. Yes.
Yeah, and he comes across this model. He sees her in a diner, gets a really nice double take of her, a triple take, if you will, and then he decides, he wants this romance, and then he, chases her down the street, and they basically start this romance, and they have friends, they go to a movie, they talk about environmental stuff. There's a lot of environmental stuff, but that's the boring stuff. Let's get to the birds. The birds, they're in a hotel room, they wake up half naked, except he still has his belt on. And the birds, there's this birdemic, and there are all these birds flying around the hotel room, and then it basically just becomes a survival epic of them, chasing around trying to shoot down these birds, while also hanging out in the broad daylight and not going indoors anywhere and trying to survive it. That's my brief synopsis, if you will. That's about
That
it.
was very good, and you bring up a lot of things that we are going to cover today.
I tried.
Okay, well, before we get into the movie itself, let's talk about the production, how this happened, how this was made. Birdemic was written and directed by James Wen. I think that's how you pronounce it. I meant to check it, but that's how I've heard it pronounced before. It was produced on a budget of $10,000, which is actually shockingly low. It's not surprising given the quality, but $10,000 is a very small amount given the fact that they made a full movie. Like Clerks was made on $32,000, but that was 1992 money, and obviously it looked better, but it's still that was obvious. So that was actually a lower budget than I thought it was going to be. So that's actually shockingly low to me, $10,000. Dylan, can you guess the 3 films that inspired Birdemic?
I can name one. I'm assuming is Hitchcock's The Birds.
That is correct.
Okay. I don't know what else. Maybe Twister. I don't really know.
No. The second one, I is An Inconvenient Truth.
Oh, okay.
Obviously,
right.
Yes. The third one, which is the one I'm not surprised at all you didn't know, was Apocalypse Now. See, originally Birdemic was intended to be an anti-war film, which is why, like, the birds, basically the birds are attacking because they're tired of humanity's violence, and they end up stopping because they want peace. They just decide that they want peace, and that's the whole reason they stop. So that was the whole idea. But then during production, he saw An Inconvenient Truth, and this was while they were filming. He saw An Inconvenient Truth and changed the basically the nature of the film during that time.
Because it's very much an environmentalist film.
Right.
I mean, again, like, I couldn't really describe it in my synopsis because it's not very clear what there's a lot of talk, and it kind of went over my head a little bit just because I'm so focused on other things in the movie that I'm not actually focusing on the things that they're actually trying to say. You know what I mean? But it's very clear. They don't make it subtle that it is an environmentalist film.
It is not subtle at all. Sometimes the filmmakers of these movies make my job much easier by being complete dongs, so that I don't have to feel bad about making fun of their movies. Right. James Wen is one of those people, which is nice. We had it last month with Tommy Wiseau, and this month we continue with the dong director. And first, and this isn't all that dongy, he instructed Whitney Moore, who played Natalie. Was that her name? I believe that was her name.
I'm pulling up the Wikipedia just so I can actually reference these names. Natalie with a TH, Nathalie.
Yes, Natalie. So she instructed Whitney Moore to not socialize with Alan Baugh, I think is how you pronounce his last name, B-A-G-H, offset, which makes zero sense to me, because the whole thing is they are supposed to have chemistry. Right. Like, if they were characters if they were like an odd couple pairing who you were supposed to like root for despite the fact that they weren't getting along, like, that would make sense. But they're supposed to actually, like, they're supposed to meet and in a short amount of time feel strongly enough about each other to fight for survival together. Like, that's the whole thing. But he told them not to socialize offset. And then on the commentary track, Whitney Moore said that Wynn would not get permits for his films, or for the film, obviously. So they would just show up and start filming places. Sometimes they get kicked out, but a lot of times they would just show up and start filming, and just kind of, who cares what anybody else had planned there. She said that at one point they were filming in a public jogging trail, and James was yelling at one of the joggers who had gotten into his shot. Moore told him not to yell at people who were not part of the movie. He stopped talking to her for 3 weeks.
Whoa.
And would only direct the movie through Alan Baugh. So he would tell Alan Baugh what to have her do, and have her to, Alan would have to tell
Wow.
her. Many of the cast members performed their own performed crew duties. Whitney Moore said that she did the makeup after 2 other makeup artists quit. And many of the crew member names that appear in the credits are fake to appear more legitimate.
Whoa. I have to ask, the makeup thing did the makeup crew quit after they did that? Because there's one really nice prosthetic, and honestly, I was surprised when I did see it. There was a pretty nice prosthetic on her face, the one gash, the one wound, but then a lot of the other wounds are like, it looks like you had like charcoal on your fingers and just smeared it, it's very clear that there's like, I think that might have been when the separation happened,
probably,
if I had to guess. Yeah.
I bet. And that's all the notes I have on the production itself. So we come to this moment, which is Dylan. What makes Birdemic great?
Yeah. I had to think about it.
If I can start if you would like.
Why don't you start? Because I know why I enjoy it, but I don't know what makes it great. I guess they kind of go hand in hand in a way.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. We're going to start with production quality, which is obviously the biggest problem with this movie. Just the production quality overall. We start, and for this, we're going to start at the very beginning of the movie or not even at the beginning of the movie. We're going to start with the cover of this movie with the superfluous subtitle "Shock and Terror," as though it were needed. As though someone might confuse Birdemic with something else. Like,
I'm not even putting the Shock and Terror in the YouTube caption, because no one's going to search Birdemic Shock. They're just going to search Birdemic.
Yes, exactly. Then we get to the opening credits, which has James Wynn credited for story and screenplay, but there's no one else credited for screenplay. Therefore, the story is all saying that he wrote the story is also superfluous, because you only really put that on there if someone wrote
two separate people.
Yeah. Right. If someone wrote the first draft and then someone else came in and rewrote it, then you give the person who wrote the first part. So yeah,
right. It's like giving George Lucas story by credits for Star Wars, even though he's not directing them anymore. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes. So those are the first two. That's before we even get into the movie itself. I think a fun game to play with this movie, which I have never done, but I realized this time I should probably start, and that is take a shot every time someone is trying really hard not to look at the camera.
Oh, dude, that would that could kill you there,
Especially in those early shots, Alan Baugh, because for some reason, like, James Wynn put the camera like right here, and he's supposed to look like not even. It doesn't make sense. The camera angle is like down below, and he's supposed to look like over. It's very weird, and you can tell that he's trying real hard to.
Right.
Oh,
it's crazy. It's crazy.
The sound is terrible, which you mentioned before. Yes, tell us about the sound, Dyl.
The sound. What's interesting? First off, they tend to take every take is like its own dialogue line. Like, in real editing, you would have dialogue interlapping, and you didn't need to see the character who's speaking every single time. So there's cuts back and forth. But the thing that they do. There's some, I don't know the ins and outs of sound, but I know the basic, the basics. And you have something called a noise gate, which you do in post, where, any background noise. So if you're filming and you have like a really loud radiator or a fan or something, you can put on the noise gate, and when there's not dialogue, it kind of mutes that sound. And that's good for like podcasts or what we're doing, where you're just kind of talking into a mic and that's all there is. But when you're outside, and you need to hear the sounds of nature, and you need to hear the surroundings to make it feel like you're actually in that location, putting on a noise gate then mutes whenever the character's not speaking. So you have characters speaking, and then as soon as they stop speaking, it's dead silence, even when they're outside, which just is not realistic. And then they don't even bother to try to equalize the levels of the sound scene by scene. Instead, they decide, if they were closer on an actor in one scene and further from an actor in the other, you can tell, even if it's the same conversation, because if the camera's up close, it's as if he's screaming into the microphone. And if it's far away, you can barely hear them. It's a really weird use of sound. And again, when you have a different take per dialogue line, every line of dialogue is at a different volume. And I think that was what was frustrating the first time I watched it, because I had my remote and it was either turn it up, but then of course it's so loud at some points you have to turn it down, but then you have to turn it up and back down. That's the game I was playing, and it wasn't even a fun game. It was a torturous game because it's all over the place.
Right. Well, you're absolutely right. Like, and it's really it's funny, and that's one of the first indicators of, other than the things I had mentioned before, it's one of the first indicators of the quality of this film is that every time a character is about to speak, you suddenly can hear the background noise.
Yeah.
So like it's dead silent, and then suddenly, and then he says a line that obviously sounds like just it's stilted anyway. So it sounds clunky. But combine that with the fact that suddenly you can hear the background noise, it makes it sound even clunkier than it should, than it already would in its
There are
own.
full shots where it almost sounds so abrupt that like you almost think there's something wrong, and then you go to turn it up more, and you're like, wait, no, it's just there's no sound there. Like the scene I think where they're knocking on the door, it's like there's nothing, there's no sound at all, no knocking noise either. It's just so weird, so weird.
Yes. Yes, it's very weird. Next thing I want to bring up is the CGI birds, but specifically the first CGI bird that they see that you mentioned happens in about 40 minutes, where they're walking and they look up and they're like, oh, look at that bird. And it is flying so slowly. It is flying unbelievably slow. It's not even that, because the CGI on these birds are terrible, but they couldn't it's so weird how slowly these birds move. Obviously they don't move naturalistically anyway, but that's the first thing I always notice, is how very slow this bird is flapping, passing by. And they set on this shot for the full time with them watching this very, very slow bird go by.
Right.
But yes, birds. Do you have anything to say about the very bad CGI birds?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, there's a level of, with the budget, there's so much you can do with, having a ton of birds in the air. This is not the movie that can be made on this budget, just because the nature of the film requires a ton of birds circling. The problem is it's all 2D birds in a 3D landscape. And it's not like your Tom and Jerry's or your Looney Tunes, the newer Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry movies, where like there's cartoons, or even Roger Rabbit cartoons in a live action universe, and they use like shadowing to make it seem like they're still somewhat in that universe. This is just very clearly like 2D over 3D, and some birds are going up and down, some are going side to side, some are circling, but they're circling in their own little orbit that like wouldn't realistically make sense in conjugation with the other birds. It's just so funny because it happens so often. Like that whole second half, it's nonstop almost, but you just can't get enough of it. Like it keeps your entertainment, and again, the sound, those bird sounds are so loud that like headphone wearers don't wear headphones for this one, just because it is so loud and so jarring. Like my dogs, whenever I watch this movie, which is only 1.5 times now, just couldn't stand the birds. They running around wondering what's going on. I mean, those bird sounds are death shriekingly loud.
Oh yes.
So yeah, I mean, it's so funny, and we got to talk about that bird on the beach too. That lands on the beach, the one that's just laying there like that. I feel like you could have gotten like even a stuffed animal, or even just like if you take a bag of feathers and like make some sort of weird paper mache thing and throw the feathers on top. Like you can make a realistic dead bird. If it's not flying, the job's easy because you don't have to make it do anything. You just have to make it lie there, and it's just sitting there, and it looks as if it just looks so weird. And especially in conjugation with the actors and the size and the proximity, like the actors are like, yay tall, but the bird is like yay big, so it looks like the bird is like half the people's size.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very bad. Well,
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
what you said about the 2D over the 3D is absolutely correct. It looks like someone put a sticker on this pic, like on the TV, and this sticker happens to move, but it looks like someone cut out a paper bird and put it on the screen, and then it suddenly happens to be moving, which, you know, it might be like a cool effect in like a 1980s music video, but it's not here at all.
Yeah, and like there's no even like bendability, or there's no way for them to move any way but this and this. So when you have this and this, it almost looks like they're like on like a windshield and they have to move side to side or up and down. There's no like, you know, it's not 3D.
Right. Well, and their wings move at like their wings move at such an even pace, and every one of them move at the same pace, that it's very clearly just the same bird over and over again. It's and you know, they stagger how their wings move, like so their wings aren't all flapping at the same time, so it's not happening exactly in unison, but it's very obvious it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, it's copy pasted.
It's copy paste. And we'll get back into the birds a little bit later, because there's some physics stuff that I would like to talk about, but that's
all right.
That's later. Next, I want to talk about the editing. Shots linger far longer than they should. Like, shots should have stopped. There's a part where Natalie goes and visits her mom and tells her, "Oh, I met the person." And Natalie's mom is just delightful. I love this woman in this movie.
I do too. She's my like actor who elevated the material in terms of like actual seriousness, like actually giving some sort of a performance, even though it's not a great one. Like, it's promising.
I love her. She's such a delight in this movie. But there's that at the end of that scene, she does this very weird thumbs up. And then it sits there, and she's with the thumbs up for far longer than a person would naturally have their thumb up.
Oh, that's my girl!
And then she just drops it and looks down and looks over, and then the scene cuts. Like,
and it's not like a freeze frame. It's not like she was thumbs up and they froze it on her. No, she's just standing there with it. So it's an actor's choice too, or director choice.
It's a director choice, because she was told that that's when the scene was going to end. So she's doing it until they say cut. I guarantee James Wynn did not say cut. He did that. She stood there, and then she stopped, and then she's like, looks around. That's why she kind of looks down and looks around, is because she's like, kind of, are we done? And which is fine. I think she did the right thing there. I think the problem is that whoever edited this movie, which I guess I should probably figure out, although that name might be fake. Whoever
Kim Chow.
Okay, if Kim Chow, if that is your real name, why
you exist?
Yeah, why did you not cut like a second after she put that thumb up? The scene, that's the end of the scene. Everything beyond that is unnecessary, and obviously looks like you didn't cut the scene at the right place.
I mean, starting from the very top too, the opening sequence, it's like just a car driving. Like, they didn't do any sort of editing with that either. And you see a lot of movies do that, but it serves a purpose. This one, it's a car driving, and they think it's a cool opening shot too.
Yeah, there's a lot of those scenes with just the car driving, and I think
just
that
lingers.
And he definitely took notes from legitimate movies that are doing that well, but generally, yes, it's serving a purpose. It's getting a character from A to B. It's kind of, generally that is used to kind of build the world that you're in, to show the surroundings, show where you are. But really, this is just a shot of the car on the road.
Yeah, it's trees, and they're not even like in the woods for a majority of it. They're either in the town, and then the second half they're like on the beach, and they're a little bit in the woods, but they're more on the road than the woods. Weird.
Yes, exactly. There is a sign inexplicably hanging in Rick and May's room. My May, I don't remember how her name was pronounced. The girl that is for some reason in that orange bikini in this scene. Um, uh, so in that scene where she is grinding on him whilst wearing an orange bikini, there is a sign inexplicably hanging behind her that says imaginepeace.com. And it's just a printed off sign. It's not a poster. It's someone printed this on about 3 sheets of paper and taped them together and put it up on the wall. Imaginepeace.com is Yoko Ono's website.
Okay.
Why?
Any reason? Yeah, is she involved in it, or do they?
No. But
and it's later on her T-shirt too, right?
It's late. Yes, it is on her T-shirt later, which at least I guess explains why it's hanging up in her, I guess, room. It looks like a hotel room, but I guess that explains why it's hanging up on her wall at that time. It doesn't explain why it's just 3 sheets of paper taped together, or why it needed to be featured in this movie at all. But yeah, that is Yoko Ono's website. The last thing for the production design that I would like to speak about is the muzzle flash on the guns themselves. It would have been far more realistic to not have muzzle flash at all than this CGI weird muzzle flash that didn't look like fire, just looked like white shapes coming out of the end of this of each of these guns. It would have looked far more realistic just to not include muzzle flash at all.
Right.
Like it's terrible. It's really, really bad.
Yeah, I think a lot of the CGI draws more attention to how bad it is than like elevates it. CGI is meant to elevate, and even in some of the older movies, like in the 90s, some of the CGI wasn't too hot sometimes, but like there's at least something in there to appreciate. But here it's like no, like the trees on fire in the woods too, like just the smoke coming up, and so
even
weird.
in the stuff in the 90s and the early 2000s that is obviously not great CGI, it at least shows it's at least competent for the time.
Right.
Like it's at least generally. I mean, I think there are occasions, and even those are usually not the fault of the VFX artists, more of the fault of the time they're given or the budget that was used. But yeah, the CGI, honestly, like I say, it would be more realistic to not show the muzzle flash. I think it might have made this movie better to not show the birds at all. Just have them being a looming threat that is caught, like that you're hearing about, and they're having to, and it might even like put in a kind of psychological element of like, are these birds even real, or are they running from the fear of the birds rather than the birds
it's like a
themselves?
metaphor rather than an actual. Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah, that would have that. You're right. That would have made it a decent movie, possibly.
Maybe. I mean, you still have the acting, but I just wanted to say I took a look. I searched what came out in because this is 2010, and we talked about like the times, like the 90s movies. Like immediately I think of like the Star Wars prequels. They're not that hot, the CGI now as they were then, and they've been restored, and it looks okay. But like you said, it's a product of its time. This is the same year Inception came out. This is the same year Tron Legacy came out. This is the same year you had a third Narnia movie. This is the same year as animation wise, like How to Train Your Dragon and Toy Story 3. So computers could do a lot.
So what you're saying is that these were in line with the CGI at the time. So no, I'm just
right. I mean, yeah, this is Inception. I mean, Inception wins the Oscar for visual effects. My ass, like this should have been nominated at least.
I assume whoever voted for that did not see Birdemic.
No.
All right. Well, that's all I needed to say about production quality. What do you want to talk about now? What else makes this movie great?
I mean, again, with all bad movies, at least the two we've covered, I mean, a lot of the merit is in the dialogue. And I think, you have to like really. Some of these lines are just ridiculous, and I know like we go through every time and say our worst line of dialogue, and we can get to that later. But there are other lines of dialogues I'm sure that you have that stick out. Do you have any that like?
I do have some, and we can do the worst lines during this section too. That we don't have to wait until later.
Yeah.
There's the thing about this dialogue is that it's bad, but also like it's the same way you said that it feels like each line of dialogue was done on a separate take. It feels like each line of dialogue was written independently of any other line of dialogue in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a part when Natalie and what's his name, Ron, I forget his name.
Rod.
Which is such a no shade to people actually named Rod, but it's a weird hero, like protagonist name. Anyway, so Rod and Natalie, when they first meet, he's like, "Hey, do I know you? You went to didn't you go to San Mateo High School?" And she's like, "Yeah, I did go to San Mateo High School." The very next line, he's like, So are you from here, or where are you from?" She's from San Mateo. You guys went to the same high school.
Right. Yeah. I didn't even pick up on that. Yeah. Wow. I think because I was so distracted in the beginning about the takes and the actual like sound and the cinematography that I didn't even pay attention to the fact that they literally say lines twice. They just rephrase them a certain way. It's hilarious.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of that. And a lot, like I said, a lot of it is it feels like they don't know what they said earlier in the movie. But then there's other parts that are so clearly message, like it's clearly message dialogue, like
not subtle at all.
It's zero subtlety in this movie. But yeah, so what was the worst line of dialogue for you, Dyl?
Well, we get a few newscasts in this film, in this thing, Birdemic, and a lot of the times, news clips are, to kind of lay a bit of exposition on what's going on. But my favorite line has to be this one: "Many have died from starvation due to the difficulty of finding enough food, such as seals."
Many have died from starvation due to the difficulty of finding enough food, such as seals.
Now, my question is: do the seals apply to the many have died from starvation? Like many have died from starvation, such as seals, due to the difficulty of finding enough food, or are they saying many have died from starvation due to the difficulty of finding enough food, and part of that food is such as seals? And I think you can interpret it in either way. I think maybe what they were going for was to say many, including like such as seals. Seals have been dying off because they're not eating enough food. But the way the grammar is structured makes it sound like they're saying that many have died from starvation and now they can't even find enough food. They can't even eat seals anymore, which makes it seem like they were eating seals before, which is problematic, I'd say. I mean, again, like people eat weird things sometimes and, do what you do. But that was a little weird to me and hilarious.
That's a great line. Yes, that's fantastic. There's a lot of stuff like that where it either doesn't make sense if you think about it, or it doesn't feel natural like a human person would say it ever. There's stuff like Ramsey at one point says, he says, what I believe it would have been the thesis for this film had it not turned into an environmental film, where he says, "I'm just tired of all the fucking killing in Iraq. Why can't we just give peace a chance?" I feel like that's the thesis statement. I kind of feel like James worked backwards from that idea to make this film. But then there's my favorite bad line of dialogue, and I'm gonna go ahead and give you that. And it's my I've each time I've watched this, I rewind it and listen to it again because I don't know why. I love this little piece. It's the thing that when people ask me, or when I tell people about Birdemic, I always mention this part of the movie. and that is that when at the beginning when he is making his sale, when he's on the phone making his sale with the person, he asks the person that he's on the phone with, and we can't hear the other end of this conversation. We can only take based on what he's saying, and he says, "What will it take to get your business?" "Okay, I'll give you that and 50% discount." And then his friend comes up and says, "How big was the sale?" And he says, $1 million, biggest sale of my career.
How big was the sale?
$1 million.
Awesome, man.
My question about that line of dialogue is, because one of two things happened, and they're both bad for this company. Either he gave a 50% discount to a $1 million sale, which would only be $500,000, or he turned a $2 million sale into a $1 million sale. This was all after the person said, "I will take your business," and he said, "Okay, also I'm going to give you a 50% discount."
50% discount is only good for the customer. It is never good the other way around. You see that when like a shoe store is going out of business and they're like, "All right, 50-75% off all shoes." Like that's like a red herring, a red flag. Like you're at the end of the tunnel, you know?
Right. But this is like you said, "I need shoes. Here are these shoes. Here's my money." And they say, "You know what? I'm only going to take part of this money."
Right. After they've already accepted
the offer, they're saying, "No, you know what? I'm only taking part of this." Yes, that part makes me laugh every time, because he says, "What can I do? What will it take to get your business?" "Okay, I'll give you that and a 50% discount." Jesus Christ.
Damn.
All right. I mean, there's a lot of bad dialogue. I think we've covered the how bad dialogue is, unless you have more that you want to share.
I have an example when we get to our train wreck moment. I have one little other bit that we haven't talked about.
Okay,
yet,
we'll talk about that.
It's a good one.
Same. Mine is similarly dialogue based. So another thing that makes this movie great is, what is time? The film starts in winter. We know this because they mention that it's winter and it's hot. And then they go to a pumpkin festival,
right, which is in October,
which is generally in autumn at some time. Yeah, September, October, around then. It generally doesn't go any later than Halloween. Generally, maybe through the end of Halloween week, but generally you're not going to get those after Halloween. Rod and Natalie are still acting like they're a new couple, but they met in winter and it's now autumn. I don't know, because I don't know what time is here.
And another little thing, An Inconvenient Truth, I did look it up, came out in May of that year, and it's so it's supposed to be the year Inconvenient Truth came out, I'm assuming. And I don't know about you, but I haven't seen many documentaries stay in theaters for at least 5 months. Which is unless
I have notes about that, because you, sir, are assuming that it's that same month, or it's that year. Well, because here's the thing. Not only is Inconvenient Truth a terrible double date movie,
right?
The movie came out 4 years before the film came out. 2 years before this film takes place, because when they're at the Autumn Festival, or Pumpkin Festival, it says Pumpkin Festival 2008. Inconvenient Truth came out in 2006.
So it's just they're showing it again, I guess. It's so good and popular. I mean, it was popular, but it was so popular they brought it back 2 years later
in the
small
theater,
town movie theater.
And just they wanted people to buy electric cars. I guess it was.
All right. Well,
there's also there's also a part where Rod tells Natalie at one point that he wants to start a green company. In the very next scene, he is pitching the new kind of solar panel that he has a patent on. So he is thinking about starting a green company. One scene later, he is pitching the solar panels that he has his patent on to somebody. I believe at some point it is mentioned that those events are 1 week apart. However, this all happens days after he put solar panels on his house for $1,000 off. So within this week, he wants to start a new. He's like, I want to start a green company. A few days later, apparently, he gets solar panels on his house. Within the few days after that, he has created and patented and now sold his business to someone for a new kind of solar panel.
How long does it take for you to get a patent? Like,
I don't know. How long does it take to design a new kind of solar panel?
He's either like a super genius like Tony Stark, or he is just, or this movie. Well, we know this movie's bad, but like, I feel like if you were to make a map of the whole, like a timeline, it would just be a bunch of squiggles, you know? Like, wow.
He is not a super genius because I saw the rest of the movie and he was not a super genius. There's also a lot, keeping in that vein, with What Is Time, because What Is Time is one of the great unanswered questions / logic questions in this movie. And there's a lot. And I'm going to go through them. I don't know if you, maybe you'll come up with some. We're going to discuss each one.
I have one very weird one, but we'll get there if you don't touch upon it.
If I don't touch on it. First one, and this is very small, but because I'm not a sports person, but is it normal to play basketball in a polo? That's the first question I have. It's not.
Golf is about it.
Golf, tennis.
Maybe tennis, but even tennis, it's usually like a lighter polo. It's not,
Not like what this man was wearing at his clearly this was a weekend game that they had planned. He wore a polo too.
It's killing me.
This is about the gratuitously long kissing scene, which honestly I didn't think anything would make me as uncomfortable as the sex scene in the room. But there's something about how long this how long this kissing scene goes on that maybe it doesn't reach that level, but it definitely rivals it. But during that scene, I had the thought, why are they in a hotel room? They both have houses. We've seen their houses. They are adults who don't seem to live with anyone. Why are they in a hotel room?
Yeah, there are a few other weird things. Like I said in my little synopsis, why does he have his belt on when they wake up in the morning? Like, even if they didn't have sex, like, you'd think he'd at least take off his belt before he went to bed. Because, like, I don't know about you, but if I sleep on my arm and wake up, there's like usually like some sort of, like mark that I slept on my arm. Like, imagine sleeping with a belt on like all night. And then their feet. I don't know if you've ever noticed their feet when they wake up are just so dirty. They are like soot. Like, they look like they have like soot on the bottom of their feet. And I don't know if this is just because like they shot some other outdoor scenes that day and this is like the last day of the shoot, but I'll put a picture in post-production and you can see it when you watch it back, that their feet are just nasty. And I'm not a feet person. I'm not like Quentin Tarantino. I don't really take time to like really hone in on the feet, but when the camera pans and it's just their feet, because it lingers on them playing footsie. And they're playing footsie for a good like 10 seconds, and the feet are dirty. And,
man,
I'm not super grossed out by it, but I mean, it was just
I did not notice on it. I did not notice that, so I'm going to be excited to see that on playback.
Yeah, especially because they have shoes. Like, this is before the Birdemic starts, so.
Okay, so those are the mild logic questions. They're the unanswered questions that I have. Now we get into the big guns, which is why do they have guns? Where did they get guns? First they have to use hangers from the hotel to fight the birds. Open the door. In the next scene, the van that they are in seems to be fully armed. Like, everyone gets a gun. Like it's like they jacked the A-Team's van. Everyone has a gun. Like, it's funny because they have to makeshift their hangers into weapons, and then suddenly they've got guns and everybody's shooting the guns with the really bad muzzle flash. Why did the birds explode?
Right. You little bombs that they're shooting out of the guns.
Yes, because all right, so the first time we see it explode, it's on a wide shot of the city, and you see them go in, and suddenly they explode, and you're like, "Wow, why? That's weird. Why are the birds exploding?"
Right.
Then we see it kind of on a smaller scale, which is they are hitting gas tanks at gas stations, which at least that makes sense as far as an explosion goes, except that the birds aren't on fire. They're just hitting gas station or gas pumps, and those pumps are exploding. Dill, why are they exploding?
Oh, I don't know. Was that a rhetorical? Or do you think I have an answer?
I hope you have an answer, because
maybe they're not real birds. Maybe they're machines sent by some other third party, and they're really like robotics, like drones almost, and then when they're shot they explode. Maybe that's the reasoning. Maybe they're not
that's
real
an interesting
birds.
thing, and that actually leads me to the next thing, because no, they are real birds. That was established. The birds have just become angry. They're mad at the way we're treating the environment, or slash having wars. I don't know which thing it was. But why do the birds' blood kill people? At one anytime they like get shot or I guess not anytime, but the few times where there's like people below where the birds are getting like shot or whatever, they like die from the acid from their blood. Or there was one point, I guess, that the birds just threw their blood on them, and then I don't know exactly
Oh
there.
man. Oh,
But
boy.
the birds aren't genetically modified. They established that they're just pissed. Like, they're just mad birds. They're
Gotcha.
angry birds. It's the Angry Birds movie. I just realized. There's a scene where Ramsey goes onto a bus and tells the people on there, you have to get off this bus. So my question is, why did Ramsey have people get off this bus where they were completely safe and then go outside and immediately die?
This brings up another point which I was gonna make, is the fact that a lot of scenes take place outside. And I don't know about you, but if there is a birdemic where everything that could endanger me is outside, why would the logic choice be, let's have a picnic outside? Let's eat outside. Let's hang out outside. Even in a car, it's like you're safe. Like you said, like the bus was safer than the outside. And it's just so weird that a
Right.
majority of the second act takes place with them walking through like woods and shit. And I feel like if there were so many birds, you couldn't make it 5 steps without getting clawed out,
The bad decisions on that front in this movie started when they left the hotel room where they were safe. I mean, they
Right.
put the bed up against the door as though birds could just open that door, but even so, they were inside. It was fine. They were going to be fine, and then they left.
Their curtains were closed. The birds didn't even know there were people inside.
Right. But Ramsey forces these people out of the bus, and then they immediately die because these are the people that got the bird blood spilled on them, and then they all just immediately die. What I don't understand why he was forcing them out, because they all said no. Like, they didn't want to go. They were like, no, we're cool in here, and he's like, no, you're leaving, and then they all immediately die. Are we meant to understand that those birds started that forest fire? I don't know why the forest fire started in the first place.
Yeah,
It doesn't make sense because the birds love nature. But suddenly the forest is on fire, and they don't ever explain why that is, and it's not, and it doesn't seem to be a wildfire, because it's not like it happening in one spot and then moving down the thing. They're going through, and there's a fire. There's a small fire over here, and suddenly there's a small fire over there. Did the birds
it's as if
start the
they're
fire?
shooting. It's as if they're shooting fire breath, because like there's nothing actually there to set the fires. They just boom, boom. They just start, and it's again those horrible effects with like where you see the smoke before you even see the fire. Like it's so copy paste. It's terrible. Ugh. And it's like each individual tree has its own little like fuse, you know.
Did the kids think that they were making a Happy Meal in that pot over the campfire? Because they seemed real upset that there was not a Happy Meal in that pot. Like
Yeah,
they were surprised by it.
that moment is it was my runner up for my Framewreck moment. That scene where they're just cooking the seaweed and the fish and all, it's just that whole scene is gross. I mean, I get it. Like that's what you do. Like even on Survivor, they do that. But like,
Right.
you just take seaweed and then just be like, here, eat it. Like I don't know. Yeah, especially when like you're fighting animals. Like there's a birdemic, you'd think like, oh, maybe we should stay away from like living animals to eat, just in case it's also
Right.
a fish demic. You know.
Right.
And that would be a fun movie, Fish Demic.
Those are all of the unanswered questions I have. Did you have any unanswered questions?
Yeah, I mean, so many, but like
right.
again, they're ones that have been asked. Yeah, I almost wonder like with the product placement of the Yoko Ono website, and then again, like they name drop Victoria's Secret, they name drop An Inconvenient Truth. Do you know anything about like the laws? Like, are they allowed to use those like brands and names for this? Is it like free range to do that, or did they just do it?
I don't know the exact law. I know that. I mean, I feel like you can mention the things because they're just part of
Right.
the culture, the cultural zeitgeist. I think it's possible that like Yoko Ono probably could have said something about her website being on there, like being associated, because that obviously seems like a promotion.
Right.
But just
But with a
mentioning
budget
it, I
of
don't.
10,000, I don't know if they even got anything from her other than like
Yeah.
that's the $1 million sale there. Like Yoko
Yeah.
Ono's like, I'll give you $20,000 to make a movie, and you're like, you can have 10,000 back as long as you include our website. All right, do you want to go into our examples of worsts of the movie?
Yes, I do.
Cool.
And we both already went over our worst line of dialogue, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. I
Okay.
do have one more line of dialogue that I forgot to mention. It's Ramsey has my favorite little gesture that he does a bunch of times, and it's this. It's the thrust. And my favorite is a day without sex is a day wasted, man. Like
A day without sex is a day wasted, man.
I mean, like the line itself isn't like that cringy because I could see like a funny supporting character be like, "Dude, a day without sex is a day wasted, man." Like it's a normal thing people could say. It's cringy, if anyone said it. But I mean, like it seems something like it's not totally out of the blue, but it's the thrusting and the pumping and it's too much. Ramsey's a hoot.
Yeah, that guy. Oh wait, that's not Ramsey. Ramsey is this is the thing about this movie is that because you would think, because here's the thing about Ramsey and this other and the guy you're talking about, which I think his name
Oh, the
is,
guy I'm talking about is the one who was with the bikini girl then.
yes, that
Is
and
that
that
Rick?
was Rick.
Rick.
Yes,
Okay, sorry.
Rick and Rod
Well,
and
IMDb,
Ramsey. They're all
IMDb.
armed.
I blame IMDb for that. But
Well, that's
yeah.
fine. But you really shouldn't feel bad because Rick and Ramsey almost seem like they serve the same purpose in this movie. It's actually very strange that they start out with Rick and May.
Mai.
Yeah, I don't remember how you say that, but it's very strange. They start out
The
with.
actress's name is Mona Lisa Moon, by the way. Who
Oh,
plays
that's
May.
awesome.
So,
that's a great name.
Interesting name, yeah.
Yeah. So it's very strange that they start out with them as like the friends,
right?
as like the
in
companions.
The yeah.
And then you don't see them for a long time, and then the next time you see them, they're dead in their car, which is very strange because they were inside. So I guess they rolled down the window for reasons I don't understand. It's a birdemic, but let's be honest, there's people who don't wear their masks, even though we are in a pandemic. So, so it's very strange that they introduce them as like the companion characters, and then kill them off screen. And
that's
then
the good makeup that I was talking about earlier.
yes, yeah, and then pick up and then there's a new set of characters who basically serve the same purpose. Why couldn't that be Rick and Mai? I don't know. I don't understand that. That would have made more like that would have felt that what you would have felt the stakes a little bit more. Like when Ramsey died, I didn't really care that much, especially because he had just forced those people to go outside of the bus and die. But I wouldn't have cared about Rick either. But in a better movie, I would have cared about Rick, because he would have been this established friend. So yeah, that's very strange.
Yeah, very.
But yes, Rick does have all of the weird sex lines that like just so we know, yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy's guy. the best friend of the main character you better watch out, get that bleep button ready because you don't know what Rick's gonna say.
Right.
He's that character.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Worst actor. Who was the worst actor in this movie?
I did find his name. It's Steven Gustafsson. Again, maybe it's a real name, maybe it's made up. Who plays Tree Hugger, and I love Tree Hugger because that's his title in the movie. I guess I looked it up. His name is Tom Hill, but they credit him as Tree Hugger / Tom Hill. Tree Hugger as one word. Again, they're in the middle of this birdemic. They go in the forest because I guess they assume birds can't fly through trees. Even though birds live in trees. And then this guy just comes around the corner and he's this tree hugger and he gives us this whole speech on global warming. And it just feels like we've now spent, 10, 20 minutes now with these birds that now you're just going to take a minute to talk about global warming. And he's so bad he's good. This is, my favorite actor and my least favorite actor all at once.
You could put it that way. I love trees. They're my family. I look out for them and protect these precious redwoods.
I almost feel like he understands the movie more than everyone else. Like he understands the movie he's in, because he also has a really great line of dialogue, which actually is almost not bad because it feels like feels like the most self-aware, which is, I hear a mountain lion. I got to get back to my house. You better get back to your car. Like that line feels self-aware. Like it feels like he delivers it almost like with a wink. But yeah, he's great. He is great.
I feel like if they were to make this movie with like an actual budget with a cast and like an actual good writer behind it, but like same concept, I think that would be like a great Steve Buscemi cameo there.
Oh yeah. That would be great.
100%. That would be who I'd cast.
That would be fantastic. Worst actor for me was Alan Baugh. He was bad. He was just he was not good. It wasn't just that he was bad at delivering dialogue. He was bad at having faces, like at having the correct facial. I don't know what word I'm searching for here. Expression. Thank you. I leapt out of my mind. Having the correct expressions for the situations that were going on. He's the one who always seemed like he was just trying so hard not to look at the camera.
Great. I made a big sale today.
Good. Fantastic.
Thanks.
He was very bad. Runner up for me would be the woman who does the news reports, which we didn't even talk about that. Okay. So this is basically what kind of our cold open, kind of what it was referencing, which was these news reports
right,
that aren't telling anything new. It isn't news. They're listing off facts that don't belong on a news report because
like there's no more seals to eat,
Right, because there's no more seals to eat.
Many have died from starvation due to the difficulty of finding enough food, such as seals.
What I loved about those scenes too is that both of those scenes started in the same way, which is him sitting at this bar in his kitchen eating, and the camera swept around him, and then it went to the thing. I mean, this is how they do films, which is that it was obvious that they did those two scenes at the same time, basically. But it was obvious that it didn't feel like it was a different day. It felt like they reused a shot because it was basically the same. He just had a different plate in front of him or whatever. Yeah. Okay, so that is our worst actors. What is an actor who elevated the material? I think you already
I already said it. I don't know which one Patsy Van Ettinger as Natalie's mother.
Okay.
Yeah, again, I picked Claudette for The Room too. I think it's just these older ladies who are just happy to be there and are just giving it their best. And they probably done a little community theater, maybe did a few soap operas or episodes of CSI or NCIS or something along the way, or Law and Order, a little small cameo here and there. They've got an IMDb credit or two, and they got hired, and I'll do this movie, whatever. It's some money, I get a few bucks at the end of the day. I'll get 50% back, and she doesn't elevate it to a point where it's but those scenes are great. No, it's just she at least is trying, and seeing her on screen just makes me happy.
I really like retirement. I like to travel. I like to cruise. And I enjoy watching television.
I agree. As I mentioned before, she was delightful. I loved her a lot. She's not my pick, but she was the runner up because she's just like you said, she's delightful. You enjoy watching her scene, and yes, her scene ends with a weird thumbs up that should have cut much earlier. But yeah, she's just delightful. Anytime she's on screen, it's nice. My pick was actually Whitney Moore, who plays Natalie, because it's obvious that she, it feels like she's in the wrong movie. It feels like
she's trying. Yeah,
she's obviously trying. She understands expressions. She seems to the dialogue is bad, but I feel like if the dialogue was better, it would have been she would have been able to deliver it well.
Again, it was nice talking to you.
She was. I did not feel at any point like she was dragging that movie down. In fact, she was definitely the best part of every scene she was in.
Yeah, she has a good energy and charisma to her.
Oh
I mean, I agree. I think she's not the weak point at all. Yeah,
definitely not.
All
right. So, and then let's talk about our train wreck moment of the movie.
Great. So the one I picked was this club scene where they are just dancing to a song that goes on, again, far too long. They linger these scenes, and the thing is, I've always had this thing in movies where it's if I don't know if he was actually singing, but the fact that it's very clearly pre-recorded, he's not singing there, and it's just them dancing awkwardly to it. And then what you said about the fact that they don't have charisma and chemistry because they aren't allowed to interact offset. It's so apparent there,
right?
Because they're dancing and it's not. There's no chemistry. It's weird. She's trying to get a lot of him, and he's awkward. He's also trying to make eye contact with the camera. And then the sound is weird because after the first song, it cuts to the second song, and it's them talking, and then you hear just some weird muffled background noises, and he's still singing. But because it's him actually singing, the sound quality is severely dropped and the volume severely smaller. So I think this is an encompassment of the sound problems, the bad acting, the lack of chemistry, the looking at the camera, the bad dialogue, the weird cinematography, the lingering on too long. It is the encompassment of all of it. The only thing it's missing are the birds. But again, the birds, I feel like once you've seen the birds, you rewatch it for the other stuff now.
Right. Yeah, no, I completely agree. That you're spot on. That is they basically, if there was a thesis statement for why is this movie bad, it's that scene. For me, it's more. Mine was slightly bird based. It's more about the central theme of the movie, which is the environmental stuff, and it's specifically the ornithologist.
Okay.
Who first wants them to get away from him and yells at them when they start to come closer. It's you got to get back. Don't you know what's going on? And then Rod says, let's go back to the table and talk. And he's like, oh, you want to talk? Okay. And then they walk very close to each other. And then he stands in front of these people very close without his mask. I think does he take his? I don't remember. Yeah, he takes his mask off. Talks very close to these people.
It's also evidence that global warming is interrupting the birth, mating, and migration cycles of many species.
Identifies himself as an ornithologist, and then someone asks, "How do you know so much about birds?" He has already identified himself as an ornithologist. But yes, it's the part where it goes back to the thing about how each line of dialogue doesn't seem to know about the other lines of dialogue. Yeah. They don't seem to know what they had already said in this movie.
Right. Yeah, or they literally just like wrote ornithologist and then like they just didn't realize what an ornithologist like they didn't understand that it was one of the same and they just made that line to clear it up. I don't. It's weird. Two things about that scene. One, having lived through a pandemic and still being in a pandemic, I think it's a whole new lens on like that moment and those moments where they're interacting with strangers. I definitely noticed that, especially when he takes his mask off. I'm like, oh wait, now I know what it's like to actually be in the midst of something like this, and that is not right. Two, I don't know if you noticed this, but there is, again, like you said, they just filmed wherever they wanted. And that's kind of what separates this from The Room at times, is the fact that The Room has that awful green screen, and this at least has natural atmosphere and production design. There is an actual bird in the background of one of the shots in the grass, just a regular bird that was just on set, just bouncing around. And it's funny because like, it's assumed that all the birds have this disease, and,
right?
And you don't hear any other birds because somehow where they're sitting out in the open air, there's no birds around them at that point in time. But there's one just hopping around in the back, and I just think it's so funny that like in a movie where it's all about the birds attacking, it's like you have a bird in the shot, and he's just a normal bird, and I think
that's funny. I didn't notice that. But yes, you're absolutely right. Sorry, go ahead.
I was looking for birds. I was like, are there any birds flying around them? And I was like, no. And then I was like, wait, there is a bird. But I was like, no, that's not a CGI bird, though. That's a real... Because I was expecting CGI birds to be flying around. I'm like, they're outside. Where are the CGI birds? And I was like, oh, they're real birds. It was hilarious.
Yes, you're absolutely right about the pandemic thing. Now that we've been through it, like there's that scene kind of resonates a little bit more when you, especially because, and like I said, with a feeling like they don't know what other lines of dialogue they've delivered when they say the next ones, where he's just like, stay away from me. And I understand that feeling where you're just like, that person is too close to me. Especially early on in the pandemic, we were all like, look, we don't fully understand what's going on. Please stay away from me. But the fact that he so quickly switches, takes off his mask, and just walks right. He's like, oh, well, you didn't mention you wanted to talk. I thought you just wanted to stand near me. Like, it was...
Yeah.
Oh, that scene. Okay, so next is Legacy. We talk about how it was received and how... basically how it came to be so well regarded. It was honestly, I'm not sure exactly. This one doesn't have like that special story like the Room had. This one was just like, it showed up on 2009 best of list for Bloody Disgusting. Well, it was I guess it was on the honorable mentions. Simply because it was the worst film you'll see in 2010. And that's basically become its legacy. It's been called truly one of the worst films ever made by Huffington Post. Variety called it. It said Birdemic displays all the revered hallmarks of hilariously bad filmmaking: inane dialogue, miscued music, which is true. The music was really bad as well. Which I guess I don't know who. I guess I should have looked into this, but composer? Did they have someone? Yeah, did they have a composer, or did they use
music by Andrew Seeger? But you never know.
You never know. Yeah, I don't know if they actually had a composer or if this was like royalty-free music. I don't know. The music was real bad. God-awful sound and special effects that simply must be seen to be believed. Birds dive bombing and exploding in red-yellow puffs of smoke, and clip-heart eagles crudely pasted on the screen with only their wing tips mechanically flapping. That's true. They did not. The wings just moved, like just parts of the wings moved. It was
terrible.
It's and it did get a sequel, as I mentioned before. Birdemic 2: The Resurrection, which was also written by James Wen, and it came out in 2013. Again, I haven't seen this one.
Me neither.
But it does have Alan Ball and Whitney Moore in it again. But this one is about a struggling filmmaker who is casting an aspiring actress Gloria in this in his upcoming film before the eagles and vultures attack. And I saw the trailer for it. It does appear to be more self-aware, but it also just kind of seems to be bad. The filmmaking, like a lot of times when a movie like this, like when a movie gets this kind of notoriety, the next movie will appear better in quality. This trailer did not appear as though the filmmaking was better in quality, because usually you get a little bit more money because this was such a big deal. No, this one, it seems like it was made the exact same way.
And I feel like also with the sequel, now that they know it's so bad it's good movie, like they're making now another bad movie opposed to trying to make another good movie.
Exactly.
And so the quality itself is probably just going to be so bad it's bad, because there's no longer that charm of this is a passion project. Because obviously when the movie came out, I think he did start to like accept it as this cult following. It's not a great movie, and then he goes to screenings all the time. Like he has, I think, accepted now that it is a bad movie, and he laughs along with it now too. But I think you can't do that twice. Once you know it's bad, you can't replicate that same thing.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing. Is like it appears to be a little bit more self-aware, which as we've mentioned before, that's not what this show is for. However, I'm going to watch it at some point. I'll report back. I'll let everyone know how
if you think it's valuable to talk about on the show, we could do it.
We can do it, but I
don't see it.
I have a feeling it's going to be more along the lines of the Sharknado movies, which is they realized what they had, and so they just went ridiculous with it on purpose. It's probably going to be more in line with that, although much lower budget. In a 2016 Vice interview, Wynn said that he was hoping to eventually make Birdemic 3: Sea Eagle as the next film in the project.
In the franchise.
In the franchise. He did start an Indiegogo campaign in order to film. The funding eventually closed with only roughly 596 out of the desired 500,000 raised. Wow, only 596. They were trying to raise $500,000. They raised 596. Oh wow, that's actually surprising to me, considering how big a deal Birdemic is. That I can't imagine they must not have marketed that very well.
I feel like they could strike a deal with Prime at some point, because Prime has it up on Amazon Prime, at least in the US here. Like it's on there, and like it has Velocipaster on there. Like there's a lot of crap on there that like people watch the hell out of. So I wouldn't be surprised if like Amazon. I don't think they will, but if I was Amazon, I'd be like, let's do another Birdemic, because people are gonna watch it.
That would be great, because I would definitely watch that. I just quick tangent. Velocipaster will not be covered on this show, because it's very clearly so. It very clearly is trying to make a bad movie. I've seen it. It's if we get desperate, maybe. I don't think we will.
Is it good though? Is it like good or no?
No.
Okay.
It's
gotcha.
It is entertaining. There are certain elements of it that are entertaining in a bad movie way, but then there are other things that are trying to appear like they're bad movie, like they are a product of a bad movie, which is clearly not the case. Like,
gotcha.
There's like a scene where like a car is supposed to explode, and then it cuts to a car and with a graphic over it that says VFX unfinished or whatever, similar to what I did in your
Pickle Awards, yeah.
Pickle Awards video. It's that kind of a thing
Gotcha.
where it's because you see that it's clear that they knew what they were doing. Like it's obvious that they knew that's what was going on. So I think it's a self-aware movie that was trying to make a movie that looked like it was a bad movie. It's mildly entertaining, but that effect wears off because it's self-aware.
Right.
So yeah, that's Birdemic.
Birdemic, yeah.
Yeah. So let's get to scoring.
All right, Matt, why don't you take us away first for this one?
I am going to give it 5 corpses of people who were safe until they were forced out of the safety of the bus they were on out of 5.
Okay. And I will be giving it 4.5 thumbs up out of 5.
That was great.
Thank you. Just because, again, like it's so badly made that I can enjoy it and like laugh at it, but again, like because it is so badly made, this is one that like physically hurts me at times, like with the sound, especially in the actual jarring sound cuts, opposed to the room where I can still like sit through it comfortably. Like, yeah.
No,
but again, 4.5. You know, it's
4.5 is good.
Yeah.
For me, it's a 5. But no, I get it. I actually expected a lower score from you, so I'm very happy with where we are.
I enjoyed myself thoroughly this time. The first time I was like, this is garbage, I'm turning it off, and this time I was like, this is garbage, I'm keeping it on.
Yes,
but I had my remote ready to play the volume game. All right, so let's move on to Mount Trashmore. Matt, as we know, we do this every episode where we have a Mount Trashmore. 4 movies. Right now, there's only one up there. It's just Tommy Wiseau, his lonely little rock carved face. We have to fill in 3 more. So Birdemic, is it going on Mount Trashmore, Matt?
I mean, it goes on automatically, I think, but honestly, I think it deserves its spot. I don't foresee this one coming off soon. I won't say it'll never come off, but honestly, for me, it's one of my Trashmore all-time great films. Or bad films, but yeah.
Yeah, I think if Tommy Wiseau is like the George Washington, like the first, and he will stay up there till the end of time. This is the Lincoln where it's like you're also like you're up there, you're good.
Yeah, you're up.
You don't have to worry about it. So Birdemic is on the Mount Trashmore, and that is an excellent thing. So Matt, I think it's time to tease next month's movie.
Okay, so next month is a big one, and I want you guys to remember our very first episode where I said there are sometimes going to be movies that you may think is actually a good movie. This is going to be one of those movies, possibly for some of you out there. This is a film that is well regarded by many, and it is well regarded by me. I love this movie. However, I love it for a lot of the things that it clearly does wrong, and that is Face Off.
You heard it here first, folks.
So this is and if you're at all confused, this is the John Travolta, Nicolas Cage Face Off 1997 film. That Dylan has never seen. Am I correct about that?
Yes, I've never seen it. So this is the first movie we'll be covering where I am completely amateur, or not amateur, I guess. But yeah, I'm completely what's the word? Unacquainted.
Yeah, that you are uninitiated. Oh God, now you've done it to me.
I'm a face-off virgin. Let's put it that way.
You are.
I was kind of trying to find the PG version, but that's what we're
right.
You
are uninitiated in the face-off army here. The as far as where you can watch it now, this may change because this is at the end of the month, so I don't know what it's going to be next month. But right now, if you have AMC Plus, it is streaming on there. Otherwise, it's renting just about everywhere in the U.S. for $2.99. Yeah, you're gonna be able to find it. Chances are you've seen it because Dyl is a special case here. Most people have seen this movie, and I'm very excited.
If you grew up, or at least 10 years earlier than me, because I was born a year after it came out. But if you were at least like a teenager. Sorry. If you're at least a teenager when this came out, you probably saw it in theaters, if not like the next few years afterward from Blockbuster or something.
Oh yeah. We had this one. We owned this movie. I watched it a lot. And let me tell you, it is ridiculous. I'm very excited about this because I love this movie. Like,
Yeah.
And believe me, there are some merits to this, and I'm very interested to see where you fall on this because there are plenty of people that for instance, this movie has 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. This is not considered a bad movie. I mean, it is considered a bad movie by a lot of people. It's not considered a bad movie from a critical standpoint. However, just about anybody who talks about it talks about the worst parts of it, the failings, how absurd this movie is.
Gotcha.
It's an absurd movie. And I'm very excited to talk with you about it.
That's why you're never going to see The Room get a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, because Rotten Tomatoes, it's like you're giving a fresh review if you like the movie. And a lot of people like movies that are just so crazy. They're maybe not bad if you're talking about Face Off for some people, but movies that are not like quality or not like prestige, but like if you like it, you give it a thumbs up, and that's how it can get 96 on Rotten Tomatoes. So I'm not surprised, but we will cover it next month, and I am so excited to do so. Any closing words, Matt? You can plug yourself, plug socials, say any last words you want to say.
You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at MattmanXIII. You are missing an I.
Oh,
I'm looking at that right now. I didn't notice it before. It's 13 in Roman numerals. If anybody is trying to find me,
let me really quickly search and make sure if I type back MattmanXIII, can I at least see you? Do you at least pop up?
I imagine.
Yeah, so if I put 2 eyes, you still pop up, but I will remedy that for next time. I can't do it right now, but yeah, please know. And in the bio, I will have XII. That was a rushed, like, oh shoot, I got to add Letterboxd to it.
Yeah,
I let it slip through the cracks. But
that's true. That was the last minute. I said, hey, can you add my Letterboxd to the thing? Oh yeah.
Yeah, MattmanXII.
So yeah, you can reach me if and when I watch Birdemic 2. You'll find out there because I log everything in there. I do give a 1-star bump to every movie that I like because it was a bad movie. So just so everyone knows, if you're looking at my ratings, The Room has 1.5 stars because it's a half-star movie with a 1-star bump.
That's a good system. I should start doing that because I think a lot of movies I gave a half-star to, it's like I genuinely hate it. Like, I know the animation's good or whatever, but Cars 2, I don't love it. I hate it so much. I give it a half a star. The Alvin and the Chipmunks sequels, I give like half a star. The Room, it's not like I love it, but it's a half star in terms of quality. So I might start doing that, man. I might borrow it and give you credit for that. But
right on. But yeah,
right, and then you can find me at Dylan_Randazzo on Letterboxd and Twitter, and you can find me here on the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. We wrapped up a whole month of stuff: 2 film offs, 1 picture this, 1 Framewreck right here, and then a Marvelous Movie Monday podcast every week. So we've been busy here. We just finished a lot of Oscar coverage. The next month is going to be like our relaxation period because we have no Oscar stuff to cover and there are not a ton of new releases, so it'll be nice. It's like, we get a Framewreck, we're gonna get 2 more film offs, we're gonna get another picture this and Marvelous Movie Monday every week, but you won't see a ton of Oscar stuff. Like this past weekend or 2 weeks, it's been a lot of content, but there was a lot of stuff going on. But
you think it's a relaxation time, Randazzo, but you're about to watch Face Off. You're about to feel the blood pumping through your veins.
You're right.
You're about to see a face come off and go on to another man.
I was wondering why you were like staring so intently at the camera. I was like, do I have something on my face? That's great. But yeah, you find me at the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. This is here and only here on the channel. You cannot find this on podcasts, but I do have 2 podcasts. Go check them out. Great American Film Off, Marvelous Movie Mondays. It's in the bio. But this is solely here on YouTube. If you like this, please like it. Commenting, it does a lot of wonders for this video. It gets it out there. Have your friends comment. Have them share. Have them like, subscribe. We want to grow this channel. Face Off is going to be a big one. So as we were talking about a little bit in our cold open, we will be doing some maybe some teasing of that episode before it happens because we really do want people watching the show. Matt has a great voice and criticism when it comes to bad movies that are so good and good movies. If you check out his Letterboxd, it's great. But yeah, like he's a great voice that everyone deserves to hear. And it'd be cool if I got out there too. So please, everyone, like, subscribe, share it around. This has been a lot of fun. Matt, any last words?
No, let's do this.
Let's do it.
What a story, Mark.